Hey everybody, welcome to Marketing Mischief and Mayhem, the show where we talk with tech marketing's best and brightest CMOs to learn about what is happening in the trenches of B2B tech marketing. Today, I'm really pleased to have a phenomenal guest. She's done more with B2B marketing makeovers than a reality show stylist with a vengeance. She's the fractional CMO who shows up when growth stalls, messaging flops, and the MarTech stack is one Slack thread away from a mutiny. Kristin Elke has helped software companies from scrappy startups to public powerhouses find their voice, fix their funnel, and actually build trust in the age of AI-induced skepticism. She's the author of Trust, Unlocking B2B Growth in Today's AI World, which might as well be required reading for anybody still clinging to white papers like it's 2012. From feedback now to serious support to Bright Rose Ventures, if you're trying to scale revenue, realign a brand, or just sound less like a robot in your next campaign, she is who you call. So let's get into it with Kristin Elke. Kristin, welcome to the show.
I'm thrilled to be here. I think I might have to use that intro on our website. That was fabulous.
More than welcome. More than welcome. Well, we're going to just go ahead and jump right into it, Kristin. You literally wrote the book on trust. How does a modern B2B brand earn trust before a buyer even talks to sales? Is it content, or is it community, or is it TikTok? And please say it's not TikTok.
Well, it's often not TikTok, but it could be TikTok because I put it in the framework of it's building your public trust profile. So it's where your audience is going to self-educate and how they learn about how the evolution of the solutions are that they need are improving over time, right? And so it could be on an analyst site, it could be on a social site, more often LinkedIn on a B2B, which is where I focus most of my time. On your website, in your partners, like what is your ecosystem in which you deliver solutions? Because again, in my environment, there rarely is a solution that is considered independently, right? It's this ecosystem of how it interoperates with other pieces of technology or how it's architected within the back end of a company's IT architecture. And so we have to make sure that as they're doing this research, and you've seen all the research, I'm sure, and your listeners will have too, what is it, 60-70% of self-education is done before they even talk to somebody at the company. So it's that public trust profile that you're building through all these other parties, and that's what they're seeing in the research, and that is what the book is about.
Awesome. We were contacted by a brand new private equity firm in Silicon Valley that we were designing, the whole brand for and communications platform. And they kept saying that one of their brand equities had to be trust. But the challenge is making that a brand equity is kind of hard because you can't say trust me, right?
No.
And I would argue that trust comes from the sum total of folks' experiences with your brand at all the touch points, at all the places. You can't just say, trust us. I can't imagine a worse way. It's like a used car salesman saying, trust me, this is the best deal you're going to find, right?
Yeah.
So do you agree that it's not really a brand equity you can list in a creative brief as much as it is something you have to deliver through all of your other tactics for communications?
Yeah, I love how you phrase that or the context in which you pose that, because what I'm finding in building this public trust profile is that I'm working more and more with customer success because it's about making sure those customers are happy and thriving and growing. And that really is what catapults your brand into the market, right? Because they are the voice. They are the voice within their industries, within their peer groups, right? So that is how I think it's changing and where, private equity firms, we work with them very closely. That's where I often take the conversation to, right? I think they say, well, what really drives success? And that is looking at where you got those nuggets of success with those customers and figuring out how to build on that. And that also helps with the transformation, right, that you're looking to do. Because if they're coming to you and they're saying, we need to rebuild, right, that's a transformative effort. And so you got the component of you need that initiative to work, and in this case, build the trust, but you also need to get all those people behind it. And so if you can find those nuggets that people can be like, I'm proud of this, we can hang our hat on it, and we can move forward in this transformation, that not only will make you successful in building that trust profile and helping support the growth strategy that you have, you will take your team along with it.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So you've built go-to-market engines at AI-forward companies. How do you balance showing off the tech without sounding like an over-caffeinated chatbot?
Yeah. when I saw this question, it made me pause a little bit, because I think I would have answered it probably different 12 months ago than I answer it now.
We'll talk about that.
Because I think where my clients were and where businesses were when you think of early 2024, late 2023 was, how are you using AI? Show me that you're AI knowledgeable, that you're competent in this space and you know how to apply it. Now I think the conversation is really more around assuming, like, you would not even have this conversation with me and try and tell me that you're an expert in this space if you weren't fully leveraging AI. And so I think the conversation, and specifically answer your question, I think it's really going back to what is the core growth strategy and remaining focused on that, and how do you curate your set of tools to apply directly to what that strategy is. Because when I go to industry events and I happen to be having a drink and chatting with somebody and they're touting all of these tools, have you tried this, have you tried that, it has now become almost more of a red flag for me. That how do you have all this time to do all this and still deliver on your job? Pendulum is swinging a little bit back in that it's not so much the shiny object of AI, it's now assumed, but it's can you curate or synthesize the right set of tools, which every day I probably have half a dozen SDRs reaching out saying theirs is the best and the latest and greatest tool. And so I think that's where when they want to hear about all that, we've got all the slide where we can show them where all the AI is. But I also try and push them back to, is the strategy right? Because AI is the enablement component of it.
Makes sense. So Feedback Now captures real-time customer sentiment. Feedback Now captures real-time customer sentiment. What's one surprising thing you've learned about human behavior from working with actual feedback data?
So as a marketer, all marketers, like after you've been doing this a while, you've done surveys, right? All kinds of surveys, right? Sometimes it's general market research, product introduction research, effectiveness, all of those kinds of things. And the more I got involved with Feedback Now, what was really the light bulb moment of it, because in the name Feedback Now, right? It's the fact that you get the feedback and it goes into a platform that directly triggers an action, an immediate action, if the analysis of the data, right? There has to have so many inputs, but it fixes the problem almost in real time, or definitely much, much faster than if you do the dated surveys, right? And so we support leading hospitals around the world, airports, retailers. What they're trying to do is to make that experience moment better in the moment. And so the aha moment for me with Feedback Now was surveys are so yesterday. Because by the time you collect it all, you look at it, you give it to the team, people say, well, what do you see in this data? Your customer's gone, your patient, you didn't take care of your patient the best way. The traveler's all angry and writing bad reviews, for you online. Whereas instead, you could actually be improving operations, often at a lower cost, if you implement these more real-time methods. I did a post on LinkedIn showing a kiosk in Reagan Airport. I live in greater Washington, D.C. area. It was about what's behind these buttons? Because we all see them, right? Everybody like, oh yeah, when I start to talk about it, I'm like, we want you to push it. Because you know what that is? That signals that where you are really cares about your experience. They want to make you happy now. Feedback now. So when you see it, don't think that it's the same methodology of a survey where you hit the button and 30 days later, or like how you get the receipt in retail, right? And they say, please go to this online thing and fill it out, right? No. They want, if you're not happy right now, they want the opportunity to make it better.
I appreciate that. I hope they do really well. So at Serious Support, you blend AI and empathy. What's the secret sauce to marketing something that's both deeply human and deeply technical?
Yeah. This has been a super fun exercise too, for a different reason. Feedback Now is really fun because their customers absolutely love them around the world. This is flipping the model for support in light of a major transformation within that function. We've been reading since AI really took hold in the last couple of years, how support functions are going all in on AI. You can give You can respond to your customers. You can do it far more efficiently. You can do it at a much lower cost. And this is almost another pendulum moment too. I don't know if you're noticing here in the States, there's even state legislatures that are looking at regulating this a little bit better. But in the midst of using AI, what we're finding is people still need that human connection to resolve their issue at times, right? And there are those moments that you have to do that. I saw something really fun about how loud do you scream into the phone, agent, representative, like when you just can't get to the right thing, like that button isn't going to get you resolved, your issue resolved. What Sirius does is it's led by a couple industry veterans in the support space. And what they did is they took a model where, and Gartner talks about this, 80% of support will be managed by AI, but you'll need about 20% to be managed by humans with that empathetic ear and to be trained by that. So they took their training methodologies and rigor and discipline, but package it in a per ticket support pricing model. So you're no longer paying for live bodies 40 hours a week to sit and wait and see if you get a call. And you got that moment where the customer needs that empathetic ear instead of the agent, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're leaning in to the fact that this industry is transforming and saying, okay, if the model is now going to be this 80-20, right? How do we make that 20 amazing? And also in parallel with the cost benefits that leaders are seeing when they reduce that overall cost with AI, they're going to be like, well, I don't want to pay this crazy amount for all these humans, right? Well, if you've got a really good product and your moments where you need the empathy of a human and a live body are seasonal or sporadic or even limited, here the pricing model aligns to that. And so that's what we're doing at Sirius. And so that's how we're blending this AI acceleration with still ensuring this human connection and making sure that you still have the training and the discipline and the right voice on the other end, but you only need it at those minimal or stressful times.
Right. So here's an aside. One of our previous guests, Farah Rosenwig, works to head up marketing at one of the new kind of AI avatar companies, where they wrap a human persona around the avatar and it looks very empathetic and it makes facial expressions and it smiles and it actually reads your emotion a little bit. So it's supposed to have a more realistic interaction. As an expert in this field, how do you feel about that? Do you think that humans will like that they're interacting with, we know clearly, a computer that's just asking us questions versus a human being? Do you think we're ever going to get to that point where we're going to trust a human-looking avatar that's smiling and nodding its head and telling us it totally understands our concerns? Something just feels a little bit off there to me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I think I agree with you. Yeah. I think it feels off. What was the word in 2024 when I was writing the book? Authentic, right? And that's also the word that's most perturbing to me right now, too. Like, if you have to say it, it's probably not there, right?
Right.
But when you try to make an image, the avatar, look like a human, I think we're telling falsehoods. And I actually think most of us are really good with agents and the technology if it actually answers the question, if it can do it in an expedited way. Mm-hmm. I personally think, and what I'm seeing why this legislation is coming out in some of these states, is that it's where the technology breaks down. You don't have that human element to come in on those unique instances. And so when we talk about blending human and AI, I think there's still a lot of work to do. I think we've gone super, super fast on the AI technology train, but the connecting it with humans and where that connectedness should be and what it should look like, it'll be interesting to see in the next 24 months where that goes.
I don't know if you remember the movie in the 80s, Tron, but they represented this kind of artificial intelligent being as almost like I don't know if it was a rotating cube that kind of flashed light as it spoke, but I'm more in that camp because I know it's fake and I want to see it thinking and responding to me, but I just don't want to see human emotions on, pixels, telling me, oh, we totally understand. I totally understand your frustration, sir, which is pretty much a usual statement people make to me when I'm complaining to customer service anyway.
Yeah.
All right. You've led marketing transformations inside both public companies and scrappy startups. What's a transformation mistake you made only?
By the way, I really loved your questions. This one has to be over rotation on marketing lead generation and not the full funnel. What I have found often now when I look at org structures, if the marketer sits under sales, the role collapses and its impact collapses. And that's when it's just like, just get me leads, get me meetings, get me leads, right? But the problem is once they go over the transom and they go to sales, if you don't have the right CRM and revenue ops that's working so that you know when to track, because obviously not all leads convert right away, and nor should they, right? Some of them are much earlier stage and some of them can convert fast. But then also, do you have the overall brand that supports what those customer conversations are? And in those customer conversations, are salespeople equipped with the selling points and the assets to be able to continue to convert that, right? Do they have the ability, particularly in enterprise selling, which is where I specialize, right? There is not a single enterprise sale of the size that I generally work on that is a single buyer, decision maker. You have like the finance people, the IT people, the security people, right? And what happens are these salespeople are put in an awkward spot. Like we haven't enabled them with like, what is the company story around that? And what is the trust and the actual information that will get that additional influencer to say, yep, I'm good with that. Let's move that forward. So the biggest mistake I made was letting myself get boxed in.
Interesting. How important, since we just kind of talked about selling into enterprise, how important is a B2B brand in getting into and actually closing an enterprise deal?
Brand?
The brand. And the product.
I think it's super important. I think brand is also another one of those words that I believe when you speak with different people, they define it differently.
I've seen
right?
that.
It isn't a commonly understood term. But when I think of brand, it actually goes back to this concept of trust, right? So if in the environments which I operate, right, are they going to take this product and work with this team? Do they believe that they have a product that is going to operate the way that they say it's going to operate? It's going to be supported the way that it's going to be, they say it's going to be supported. And do they have all the compliance and risk management of all your data associated with that? And I think that all goes into, that among other things, goes into what is your brand and what do you stand for? Often too in the space that I'm in, it speaks to innovation, right? Because the cycles are so fast. Does your brand represent current relevancy so that when you buy it today and you invest in training your team and changing your motion inside of your organization, 12 months from now, are you going to have to switch to another product because your brand doesn't represent innovation? It's not going to stay relevant to your customers as the world moves on. All of those things, I think, go to brand, and it's not about the product. And so I think it's super important.
You know, it's interesting, in some research I was doing in helping support brand in B2B technology, which I'm a huge supporter and fan of. I think it was either Gartner, I've mentioned this several times, either Gartner or Forrester report that shows what an unknown brand has to go through in enterprise sales. I call it death by duck bite. We're literally going through a committee. There's 30 different ways for you to get exited from the process. But the known brands, straight to the short list.
Yep.
Right? And that's been brought home. And then secondly, as now millennials are predominantly in these positions now of power in these procurement processes, they have an entirely different and more powerful opinion on wanting to see brand versus Gen X did or boomers in the past. So we now have a whole new workforce that wants to know your brand, that wants to see it, that wants to feel it. And they want it to be special, as millennials do. So hopefully we're going to start seeing more great brands coming into the B2B tech space.
You know what, when we were chatting before, it didn't come up, but where we started in this space and the brands that we worked with, right? Remember, IBM was right in that mix at the time. And the reputation that they built for their brand was, you can never get fired for buying IBM. Right?
Heard, yeah,
exactly. And that's 30 years ago.
Yep.
But that how that stuck with that brand. In fact, the impetus of my book is kind of in this space, in that it was a big enterprise play going into Fortune 100. That's where I was spending my time then as a marketer. We got a top of funnel was super strong. We got that first conversation with the people we wanted to get with. Couldn't get past the middle of the funnel. And it was primarily because the trust profile was low, and I started digging into it, and that's when I became super interested in this. But that goes to brand.
That's right. Well, you and I kind of share a history that we both worked on Sun Microsystems back in the day, right? And so I was at the agency that did the big, .com account, like when it just blew up and Sun was everywhere. And that was a very strong brand. In fact, what did we call it? We called it the
Network
activist.
is the computer?
We call it the activist. That was like, that big ads that said, yeah, the network is the computer was kind of the original Scott McNeely battle cry. But we had the ads that were like, we built the backbone of the internet. Can we build one for you? Gizmos of the world unite for launching Java. All those kind of big statements. But it was so hard to kind of break the stranglehold of Unix and all the major players. That's where that IBM, you never get fired for buying IBM, and Windows, doing so much to kind of squash Java at that point and kill Sun. It's just kind of interesting to see that even at that point with such a strong brand and such big global communications, there's still some real issues in that funnel and trying to get people all the way through it and to sign on the dotted line, even if you have the superior product, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that goes to brand, right? Brand can overcome where the product features might still be strong. You might still be strong, but the brand is weak. It won't pass on, or vice versa, for sure.
Yeah. And at the same time, there's also it's another old case study, but AMD back in the day had the superior product. Yeah. They really did, but Intel Inside came out and made people all of a sudden care about what was inside the putty-colored box that nobody ever talked about, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, so many marketers today, Gen Z, who now joining agencies and working places, they have no idea even what Intel Inside is.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny, as the longer I've been in this business, the more I see variations on a theme, and we have some very well-worn pathways that many new brands can start walking down that we know delivers success if we play our cards right.
Yeah. Well, you brought up another memory. It was the .com.
Yeah, we put the .com.
When things really started to take off. And when we think about the impact of brands, that's also when the general population was not very tech knowledgeable, right? But they knew this thing called the internet was out there, and these companies out in California were working on it, but they didn't quite know how it worked. But then when the brand story broke it down and said, we're the .com, people were like, I get it. You guys are what's making all this surface to me on whatever device I have. And it became telling our story much easier, for sure.
Yeah. So as a fractional CMO, you're the fixer, the growth whisperer. What's the first thing you always look for when diagnosing a broken B2B marketing organization?
Yep. I say that I've refined this over time. And now it's always, I referenced this earlier, it's always going in and finding a couple things that are working really well, right? Because you want to find everything that's going on in the business. And if you focus on the negativity and the wrong, people are going to close up. So you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to make doing that discovery super hard. And then when it actually comes time to affecting the change, putting in new processes or new tools, you now have created this negative environment where success will be much harder. So what I try to do is I try to go in and I find, because every business that's in existence has a couple things that are going well. It's the fact that the overall operation isn't aligned, working well together, or they have a couple overpowering negative things. But they do still have the positive. So go in and find that, focus on that, and then build from there.
Makes sense. So you've helped brands sell AI, automation, and transformation, but what's the hardest thing to market in B2B right now, and how come?
I think differentiation. And I think it's because it's a race to market and the stories aren't well told. And I think I was reading something from the Gong CMO. Different is better, right? So the job of a marketer is to help explain your product versus the other options they have out there. And those other options being sometimes resistance to change, right? They don't want to go through all the training. They don't want to go through the effort of the internal change effort of whatever that would take to implement your product or service. So I think the hardest thing right now is in the pace of campaigning, the pace of innovation that's coming out, being very focused on making sure you can differentiate both at the top level brand messaging, but then as the questions get deeper, right, that you have very clearly understood and your team can articulate from CS to sales and of course marketing, who helps define that with the input of product, right? That you have that differentiation and you've taken the time to do that.
So you've built modern MarTech stacks in the face of budget pressures. What's one AI tool that's earned a permanent spot in your tech stack?
Yeah. So I also work with businesses with limited marketing budget. And so I come to this answer in that context. And so part of it is you need a tool that delivers the value, but within the budget and the price performance that you need it. So to me, it would definitely be HubSpot right now because it has a platform, right? So you get a ton of different capabilities. It's innovating. It just announced some other AI capabilities earlier this week. So to what we were talking about earlier, like I feel when I bet on them, I'm betting on, functionality today and relevance, going into the future. But I would also, tightly couple that with ChatGPT. And if it was, I have only one I can pay for, I'd choose to go with HubSpot and do the non-paid version of ChatGPT because I think there's incredible functionality there too.
I'm making a mental note to call HubSpot for a sponsorship. Okay, let's talk advocacy. You've pioneered customer voice programs. What's your advice for CMOs who want to turn customers into evangelists without it feeling like a hostage video?
Yeah. Move it to sales and success, right? Because it's about a relationship. I think what the biggest difference I've seen, and I had a bit of a debate online with someone one time that just said, is what you're advocating just what we've always had in marketing where you go out and you capture the stories? No, because our world doesn't operate that way. Yes, marketing still should do that. You should have that formalized information, but it's not just that. It's this world in which we operate that's very fast-paced, very social. And so when your teams are out there, right, and they're engaging with your customers and your partners and the analysts, capture that in the moment, share it in the moment. Right? And all of that collectively then builds up to that public trust profile. And frankly, it's doing it in the way in which we all expect. I mean, even our conversation now, remember when we started in this, everything was highly produced. We would have scripts and we'd have different videos going on. That's almost kind of like, I'm not sure, like you question if they're choosing every word and reviewing it 6 times, what's the trust level on that? I think there is some level of skepticism.
Yeah, we're circling back to authenticity, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, here's the fun part, as if the last part has not been fun, but I think it was.
Yep.
We're doing the lightning round now, and just the first thought that comes to your mind, some silly questions, some more serious, but just love your first take, okay?
Okay.
Which is harder, building trust in B2B or assembling IKEA furniture with no instructions?
Definitely building trust in B2B. I'm a woodworker. I can figure those things out.
Okay. One buzzword you'd erase from every slide deck forever.
Authentic.
Is feedback now, if it was a cocktail, what would it be called and who would order it?
Something bold. I'm a Tito's drinker, so it wouldn't be that. But I would say spicy drink, spicy margarita, that it's just right there in your face. Real-time feedback's right there, and you can action it right away.
I like it. So it's a margarita. It's a tequila-based drink. Okay, I like it. More terrifying, AI going rogue or a rebrand 2 weeks before your podcast launch? Excuse me, let me read that again. More terrifying, AI going rogue or a rebrand 2 weeks before your product launch?
AI going rogue. I've done many rebrands. I have less stress.
Okay, you've got a blank billboard in Times Square for 24 hours. What does it say?
Definitely something about how as AI takes over the world, like remain human, don't forget who you are, be in the moment, make sure you have those meaningful connections.
I like it. I'd pay for that. B2B marketers should spend less time on blank and more time on blank.
Trying to fix things that didn't work, just simply move on. MQLs that don't work, it's kind of like when you're in a bad relationship, right? Don't try and fix the person, realize it's bad, move on to the next thing. Spending more time on what we talked about today. So it's about finding that differentiation and telling that through the voice of your customer.
Okay. What's your most controversial marketing opinion? One that makes other CMOs do a double take on Zoom.
Lately, it has been around remote teams aren't a compromise, right? They're a competitive advantage. I'm seeing a lot more clients where they're like, we want everyone in the office, you need everyone there. And I have been remote from well before COVID, more than 20 years. You can find amazing talent all over the world that works well together. I think it just takes very, very good leaders and managers.
Yeah, it's funny. The whole office mentality is really a relic from the past. And I respect, but I'll tell you what, we ended up going, TheorySF started going liquid agency during COVID, right? When we had this very expensive office space near the Transamerica building in San Francisco. And we let that go during COVID because we couldn't go. And it didn't necessarily affect any of the delivery of our services because we were able to meet in other ways. But there's one thing I do miss, and that is sitting around a conference room table with a giant whiteboard and having good-natured arguments on brand positioning and so forth in person. I think there's an energy that comes from people together and that kind of back and forth. I find that I'm really kind of missing that.
You know, I love those sessions too. What I find, and it was surprising with a few clients, they have a office policy of being in the office, and when I would go there, no one would be there. So it'd be the whole idea that I was going there to collaborate in person, but it still had to be scheduled. Mm-hmm. And so I love those sessions, particularly if it's about, you know, that ideation and, you know, building that relationship so that when moments get stressful, and they will, you have something to fall back on, right? May it be a deadline or a project not going the way that you want or a client that is being super difficult.
Mm-hmm. No, you're totally right. I've actually said that exact same thing. Okay, you can keep only one part of your MarTech stack. What survives the purge?
HubSpot, CRM, yeah, because part of it is, the platforms now give you those insights into what customers are saying. So from a messaging perspective, you get smarter. But I always have to think about the investor, right? And I can give the investor the data with that too. So it serves double purpose.
Awesome. What's your CMO origin story? Bitten by a radioactive spreadsheet or a well-timed Gartner stat?
Neither. Super meandering. I didn't realize what I wanted to do until my late 20s. I always liked to write, loved selling. I did like very junior selling roles and then went back to school, got a journalism degree, but realized they don't make as much money as I want to make. So I was like, marketing kind of fits in there. And I got super lucky. I had a friend that it was at Sun, and my career just took off from there.
Well, Kristin, I think you'd be a great X-man, or X-woman as it would be. The best piece of advice you'd give your younger marketing self if she'd actually listen to it?
Be deliberate about finding influential champions for you. I think I didn't learn fast enough that is a deliberate act, right? Because most people want to do it. I want to do it. I'm thrilled when people ask me about feedback about their career and their skills, because I was very fortunate that I eventually found a few that were amazing for me and my career, but I wasn't deliberate about it in the beginning.
Yeah. You know what mine is I realized 4 to 5 years ago that I've had an extraordinary ability in my career. I've met so many world-class marketers, so many incredible people, CEOs of major tech companies that are mega famous, or people and so forth that have been very instrumental in my life. And I did a terrible job of keeping in touch with people. I really did. And then especially when you stop going to shows like after COVID, stop going to a lot of the trade shows, stop going to a lot of the events, it struck me how, and I actually started reaching out to people I've worked with 20-something years ago, because I had this kind of nostalgic thing, which has been wonderful, reuniting with folks who were actually influential on me at the time, and I never told them.
Yeah.
It was kind of cathartic and awesome, and I've been really trying to do that, going back to my Rolodex, meeting people again almost for the first time when it's been so long. So I highly recommend you do that if you haven't. That's been really great for me. But hey, that's the end of our show. I want to thank you so much for coming on and answering all my silly questions. I've loved the information you've provided. I hope our audience does as well. And I want to thank you so much for being on Marketing Mischief and Mayhem with me.
It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. Thank you very much for the conversation. I hope we stay in touch.
We will stay in touch.